It's on.
All right. So live streaming has started. As soon as you're ready,
Wonderful. So should we
you can
begin the
start.
event?
What's the time?
We still have 1 minute to go.
Okay. Who are your speakers? Let me just get them all seated.
Rosalind and Anna.
On it over there. Okay, great.
We'll start again. Apologies. A very good afternoon to you and a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. The Adaptation Research Alliance is a global coalition representing 100 organizations from over 30 countries. Among our members are researchers, funders, policymakers, development bodies, and community-based organizations. Together, we are committed to co-producing solutions founded on real-world experiences that generate climate-resilient futures. We are proud to have formally launched our alliance here at the Conference of Parties during the Science and Innovation Day yesterday. Our launch not only signaled the growing momentum within the adaptation community of doing things differently, but also that our vision is being put into practice. During our launch, the UK and Canadian governments announced aid commitments of over £100 million to the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Research Program, and 2 innovation funds for climate adaptation and resilience from ARA members, the Global Innovation Fund, and the GSM Association were also launched. Catalyzing initiatives like these and working to facilitate more, like among them our membership, is a future we are really, really excited about. To speak more about how we got where we are today and how important our alliance for bringing real adaptation solutions to communities that need it most, I'm really honored to introduce our co-chairs, Dr. Anand Patwardhan, professor at the University of Maryland, and Dr. Rosalind West, who's with the UK FCDO. Anand, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Aditya. And real pleasure to be here following the successful launch of the ARA, the Adaptation Research Alliance, yesterday. And really happy to be able to share with you a little bit of our history. So it's not a very long history, but the road that we have taken to where we are today, where we are now, and what we see looking ahead. And we'll be doing this jointly between myself and my co-chair, Rosalind West, from the UK's FCDO. So as Aditya mentioned, the primary motivation for the ARA comes from the recognition that knowledge and science is central to action. But very often we find that we are not seeing the true benefits or the true impact of knowledge to drive and accelerate action. And so what motivated us to come together for the ARA is to try and figure out how do we create an alliance that can actually help overcome these barriers. And there are many barriers. They have to do with underinvestment, lack of money into research, but also they have to do with institutional factors, misaligned incentives, lack of capacity. So there are these barriers that we really want to overcome through the alliance. And that sort of brings us to our core mission. And the mission of the alliance then, if we can move to the next slide. The mission of the alliance is really to bring about this systemic transformation in the research action landscape, and do that by accelerating and scaling investments in action-oriented research. And we'll talk a bit about what we regard as action-oriented research that addresses the pressing knowledge needs of those most vulnerable, but does it in a way that at the same time builds capacity, that strengthens these linkages between research and implementation, and promotes greater learning, learning by doing and learning while doing. Next slide, please. So where have we got to? What you see on this slide is an amazing, diverse collection of organizations that have become members of the ARA. And this growing community of the ARA spans really a full range of stakeholders and is a multi-stakeholder coalition in the truest sense of the term. It includes government departments and agencies, the UK's FCDO, the Netherlands agency, the NWO, the French agency, AFD. So all the way from government departments and agencies obviously to universities from the Global South and the Global North. The LDC University Consortium is a member, but then also community-based and action organizations. Really happy to have Samana Sen from Resurgence, which has done a lot of pioneering work at the community level. And then international organizations, UNEP and UNDP, as well as philanthropic foundations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So really, in that sense, captures the full diversity of actors that have a role to play in this research and action landscape. And this growing community has come from our starting point earlier this year at the Gobeshna conference in January, where we had a group of 33 organizations that committed to working together to co-develop the ARA. And so the ARA, as you see it today, is really the product of labor and love of a lot of organizations. It is really, again, has been an intense process of co-creation, a process of dialogue, a process of consultation. And where we are with the ARA now is we have a theory of change. And that theory of change, as I said, starts with some of the barriers and the problems we've identified. It identifies three key functions of advocacy, better research planning and coordination, and resource mobilization and delivery to address those problems and hopefully then lead to the outcomes and impacts that have to do with increased investment in action-oriented research, and then fundamentally leading to making a difference in the lives of those most vulnerable. That's the core impact, ultimately, of course, that the ARA seeks to accomplish. We have also started now the process of developing work streams. How do we put these functions into effect? What are some of the activities that we can do to actually implement this theory of change? So we have started developing work streams and adopting the learning by doing approach. We have not just done the identification of the development, but we've actually started doing pilot activities. So even before our launch at the COP, we are very happy to have produced our first set of outputs from ARA's work. We have run consultative processes in food systems, in health, in climate risk assessment. We have one upcoming on gender and social inclusion. And these outputs of these processes have already started informing actions. So as Aditya mentioned, one of the commitments that was announced yesterday was from the UK's National Institute of Health Research, and that has been informed by one of our consultative processes on health. So this development process has resulted in a joint statement, next slide please, that was released yesterday by the ARA members. And this joint statement really acknowledges our commitment to work together and co-develop a robust portfolio of activities. The joint statement also signals endorsement of a set of principles. And these principles are really important because these principles, these adaptation research for impact principles, define the contours of the transformation we are trying to accomplish through the ARA. And they help lay out markers that will help us in that, on that road. Next, please. So these adaptation research for impact principles start with the recognition that ultimately the purpose of research ought to be to make a real difference to the lives of people who are most vulnerable. And which means that research needs to be needs-driven, demand-driven, and user-centered. Accomplishing this purpose will require actually quite a major shift in how research is traditionally carried out. Research will have to bring in much more centrally ideas of transdisciplinarity, co-production of knowledge, where really we lose this distinction between producers and users. Right? We are all equal partners in this enterprise of producing knowledge to support action. And this research enterprise then needs to be incentivized and measured and supported through metrics that emphasize societal impact to ensure that incentives are aligned. So it's not then for the academics a matter of impact factors and citations. It's really the impact that our work has had and the difference it has made. And we look at the process of research itself as accomplishing some of our outcomes, as a process that builds capacity. So that's a principle for us. So that capacity building is not an afterthought, is not an add-on, but is central. And that the process of research itself should address some of the underlying structural factors that make us vulnerable in the first place itself. And then finally, the systemic change we are seeking is not just in the research enterprise. When we talk about the bridge between research and action, a bridge has to have foundations at both ends. And it needs change on the action end. And the change it needs on the action end is the recognition that knowledge is central, the research community is central for accomplishing learning. That when we are thinking of adapting to a changing climate, we need to ensure that we can learn while doing and learn by doing. And to do that, we have to have the research community as integral partners in the world of action. So this is where we are today. We have come a long way, but obviously this is an enormously encouraging start with commitments, with thinking, with the energy and the intense involvement of the range of organizations you have seen previously. So I'd like to turn over now to my co-chair, Rosalind West, to share with you a little bit of how we see the future unfolding and the next steps that might come. Thanks.
Thank you, Anand. And, it's such a pleasure to talk to you all about this. Anand and I, we met 2 years ago at COP25, and we had this idea, and we realized that, there was a bit of a lack of visibility of adaptation, and particularly of research to inform adaptation that we saw at COP25. And we really, I work at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office in the UK, and I sort of realized there was this opportunity as part of this UK presidency year to really underscore the centrality of research for informing effective adaptation. And we're really humbled and delighted that this thing has really taken off over those 2 years, and that over 100 organizations have now really come together and committed to this quite serious joint statement, these set of principles to really guide this much stronger connection between research and action for really informing effective adaptation. And so to kind of bring this vision to life, we have worked together with these organizations to co-create our strategy that will allow us to technically, take this forwards. We've settled upon 3 key functions for the Alliance. So first, that this Alliance, through working together, we can be a much more effective advocate for change and for this much closer relationship between research and action. Secondly, that the Alliance can really be a facilitator for that change. And I think that's really through much better coordination of our research efforts, much better planning and radical collaboration, across such a wide range of different types of organizations that are really involved in adaptation on the front line. And also that an alliance of this scale, a global alliance, can be a strong catalyst for this change by helping to mobilize resources to deliver it, particularly for action-oriented research in the Global South. So, the first of our adaptation research for impact principles that Anand just mentioned, is really to ensure that research itself is centered on users, that it's driven by the needs and it's oriented on solutions. And we've already made a start on that, as Anand was mentioning, through the consultative processes, which I think is a really great way of really understanding, from the bottom up, what are the priorities for research? Where should we be better targeting our agendas, and to really identify what are the needs for research and what are the opportunities, and how, where do we really need to build the capacity to do that research, across that whole chain from research all the way through to action. So the first of those, as Anand was mentioning, on global health, is already being used to inform the research agenda for a new major funding call from the National Institute for Health Research in the UK on climate resilient health systems under its sustainable development kind of agenda. And so that will be coming out soon. And we also have the food systems work that's been looking at smallholder farmers and what are the priorities of research there to inform adaptation there. And then the third area is really looking at climate risk assessment, all the different approaches that people have been taking, how we can share our approaches there, and what are the priorities for climate risk assessment in the least developed countries? How can we really scale up that and link it through to national adaptation planning? What are the research gaps and what are the research needs? Where do we need to build the capacity to do that? So that's been the first effort, and those the reports from those are available online, and we're really looking forward to kind of engaging further on those, because this is just the first start of the journey on there. And we'll be looking in the future to identify other priority areas where we will be doing many more of these consultative processes. So then, a next and important step to ensure that this identification of needs and opportunities is broad, but it's also deep. We're actually announcing now that the ARA will be shortly launching a call for submissions for microgrants. This is just a first activity to get us going on this, really for identifying burning issues for research. So this is for needs and opportunities identification, and it's targeting countries in the Global South. The idea of this is that it will support the engagement of our members and really getting going on thinking about some of this stuff, and help to build the capacity for action research in this new way of working. And also it's an opportunity, I think, to see that formation of new partnerships and allow people to work in new ways and to collaborate, because those collaborations, they take time and they take effort, and that doesn't come for free. And so we hope that these grants will help enable some of that. And then I suppose the next part is, in this adaptation landscape, there are already many people who are engaged in this, many actors, many networks. An alliance like this can really be a facilitator and should be bringing together some of those actors and players. And we've been entering into some strategihave partnerships, especially with some of the major international organizations that are working in this area, and that we hope that through engaging in this alliance that they can then have that connection down, across all the different levels. So we've already developed these strategic partnerships so far. We've made the first steps on them with through some joint statements with the Risk-Informed Early Action Partnership that's really looking at, how can we use research to inform anticipatory action to reduce the impacts of extreme weather events and etc., which we'll see many more of in the future. And then the second one was with the UN Development Programme. And so great to see some of that. And I hope that that kind of connects up, through the maybe consultative processes that we've started already. That's really been looking at the kind of bottom up, and then this also comes from the top down. We have to approach adaptation at all the levels. It must be, the solutions must be locally led, but they need to be enabled by finance and the institutions that come right from the top down. And then I guess the last of these areas here is really on learning. That's such a key objective for us, and we have to, through this alliance, learn from one another, and through doing that we can really progress much faster than we would have been able to, any of us would have been able to do alone. So that's really central, and that learning agenda is really crucial for what we're doing. But as an alliance, we want to go beyond talking about this stuff, and we really want to get into doing some of this stuff. So I guess I've been really pleased that we can announce, and that was announced by Minister Milling from the UK yesterday during our formal launch, that the UK, in partnership with IDRC in Canada, the International Development Research Centre, will be launching the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Research Programme, CLARE. So we've collectively committed £110 million through this to support action-oriented research and capacity strengthening that we really hope will help to build resilience, that will be able to address some of these key knowledge gaps that we're seeing coming through these processes to identify the priorities, and that will be able to help inform climate resilient development and enable a much more effective response to climate crisis in the global south. But this task is huge. So Claire cannot do this alone. We hope that this is the first initiative of many that we'll see like this, all coming under the umbrella of the ARA and being able to share the lessons and learn from one another through doing that together. And so the launch on yesterday also saw 2 new innovation funds for adaptation and resilience being launched. This is really important. Innovation is absolutely crucial for adaptation, and I think it's been lacking for a while. So I think it's really great to see some injections of finance that are dedicated to innovation on adaptation and resilience. So we had one announced from the Global Innovation Fund, and also one announced by the GSM Association. The aim of these funds is really to enable acceleration, testing, and adoption of innovations that have the potential to scale. And that's absolutely crucial for adaptation. It's not going to happen just through all these little pilot studies. We really now need to be moving to adapt at scale and support the world's poorest to build resilience and to adapt. And I guess the last thing I say, this is just the beginning for the ARA. We have 100 members. It's a really solid start. But there is so much, further to go, and we really hope to keep up that momentum that we've seen, on this and the interest in the last few months, and really grow that, and really help to facilitate action-oriented research and innovation that really develops new, practical, actionable knowledge and solutions that genuinely reduce the risk from climate change. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anand and Rosalind. You saw that wonderful, colorful slide with all those logos of our members. We're really delighted and honored that one of the members of the Adaptation Research Alliance, Resurgence, is represented here today by Sunena. Sunena, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Let me first begin by congratulating Anand and Rosalind for an excellent launch event yesterday and for finally getting the Alliance off the ground. I think for me, what I was really fascinated to see was that something that started last COP has finally come to life this COP. This is my first COP. So, the question really is, what are the tangible outcomes of a COP event that makes it really worthwhile to participate in this? So really happy to see that. And also huge congratulations for securing the very crucial grant funding. As you said very rightly, without funding, none of this work can really come to life. And I'll come to that later on, how this kind of funding impacts organizations like us and the communities we represent. But yes, so I'd first like to start with maybe talking a little bit about the work we do on the ground and how it aligns with the work ARA is hoping to do. So I am Samana Sen. I'm the program manager of an initiative called the Raja from Resurgence, which is a social enterprise based in the UK. Oftentimes there's a disconnect between weather information like forecasts and early warnings and the users of this information. And this affects users' ability to take critical action that might be life-changing. This disconnect is felt most profoundly by highly vulnerable communities, such as those who live in informal settlements or slums, as it's known in some parts of the world. So our initiative, the Raja, focuses on bridging this gap using practical solutions that are evidence-based and community-driven. So we collaborate with various actors across the system to make weather information actionable. Really, if information cannot be used to take action, there really is no point of that information. However, even though we collaborate with all of these different actors, we do put communities at the very center of this system and the process. And we don't like to use the term last mile to describe them because they're not the last mile, they're not an afterthought, they're very much at the center of the system. And as we've been hearing this COP, they are also the first adapters of climate change. First adapters to climate change, sorry. So yes, absolutely, communities play a critical role in projects like ours, and not just in some parts of the project. They're very important right from the research phase of the project. So we work with communities we work with communities closely to ensure that their inputs are in the research design that we do, because the outcomes of the research work is what develops the solutions later on. So involving them right at the research phase makes sure that our work reflects the experiences and context of the local communities. And local communities also drive the design decisions of the solutions itself. And that makes the solutions very much locally led. And ultimately, this entire process results in a system that is user-centric, inclusive, and collaborative. And then also ultimately that results in action and resilience. So now coming back to the Alliance and what really we get from participating in this Alliance is really, we have a shared vision. I think the vision of ARA and the vision of the Raja and Resurgence are very much aligned in the sense that, we work with multiple stakeholders and we work with them to co-design solutions. And I think for us as a community-facing organization, we are bringing communities to the table that has largely traditionally been excluding these communities from research work. Not on purpose, but by, just by default. So no organization has all of the skills and resources required to meet all of the needs of the community. So alliances such as this definitely create a program and a community through which we're all able to leverage each other's skills and strengths and amplify the impact each organization has on the ground. So that's what we get out of being with ARA, but also what we contribute to ARA is we bring, as I said, we bring the lived experiences of communities to this discussion between researchers and practitioners. Hopefully, we will have many communities who are now joining this work of adaptation they will also be at the table and not just intermediary international organizations playing that role in between. So I do hope to see that a lot more, and that makes it more inclusive. And yes, I think finally ARA facilitates more partnerships that helps us do a lot more of this at scale in many parts of the world. Like the initiative, the Raja, that I've just described, we've done so far, it's a young initiative, and so far we've done it successfully in East Africa, in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. We are currently delivering this in Jamaica, And we're hoping to start soon in India, hopefully early next year. So, and now that brings me to the funding calls that you all put out yesterday. For organizations like us that are community facing, and Resurgence is just one of many organizations who are doing important work like this. And for initiatives like the Raja, we need to do this at scale because we need to do this quickly. And we know that this works because it is completely underpinned by collaboration with the community. So having funding opportunities like the ones that were announced yesterday is absolutely crucial for us. Obviously, the mechanism of getting funding does take a little bit of time, but regardless, the fact that you're putting your money where your mouth is I think such an important positive signal. And hopefully, if I think about from this outlet, tangible outputs from this COP to the next COP, hopefully these grants will help us see more tangible outputs for the next COP related to this. So yes, I'm very, very excited to be a part of the ARA and look forward to what we can do together with other partners. Thank you. Back to you, Aditya.
Thank you, Samana. And of course, we as the ARA are thrilled that Resurgence are members of the Alliance. So thank you for your really insightful comments. I would like to invite any questions that you might have for any of us about the ARA. As you've heard, Anand and Rosalind are the original creators and the people who designed and thought up the ARA. Sunana brings the perspectives of people working with vulnerable communities and how they can benefit from this alliance. I myself have led the membership drive and developing a tracking, learning, sharing system. So do let us know if you have any questions and we'd be very happy to answer them. Unfortunately, given the technology, whoever has a question has to walk up to the mic and speak into this. I think that's connected to something. No? Any questions? I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Mark, is that you? Yes, please. The mic is yours.
Yes. Okay. Don't worry. I must confess to being Sunana's colleague. I have a question about this word scaling, because I think that it carries certain associations and baggage. It seems to come out of the corporate technology sector. And we often think about single point technology solutions that have somehow scaled a platform such as Facebook. Is this a trap, arguably? Because I feel that when I think about those 8 principles for locally led adaptation, and I think about what it takes to make a local resilience initiative, and there are so many, but to make that sustainable and locally owned seems to be somewhat different from the scaling that comes with technology. So do we need another word, or are we actually going to own this word ourselves as ARA and put our own interpretation around it? Because if I open my mouth and use that word with impact investors, all they care about is the technology and the efficiency. I care about the inefficiency as well. I care about all that collaboration, which can be time consuming, but ultimately it leads to ownership, sustainability, and impact. So do we need to rethink the word, or do we need to re-own it, as it were?
Sunana, do you want to respond to your boss? No, I'm just joking. Anand.
No, but I'd like to hear Sunana's response as well. But not to put you on the spot. So Mark, great point. In my mind, the way scaling is traditionally used is replication. You take something and you just replicate it, right? I think in my mind, at least, scaling has a very different connotation. So maybe we have to re-own the word or invent a new one. And I think to me, it's really about the fact that what you need to scale is you need to scale the effort. But that effort will take very different forms in different places. And that effort may look, the solutions might look very different. So there's going to be heterogeneity and variety. And we should celebrate that actually, because it, in a way, it indicates that what we are doing is likely to resonate and be successful in the long run. So I think simply, at least for me, and which is why, for example, I really sometimes don't like the term best practice, because the term best practice signifies we know everything about what needs to happen and just a matter of doing the same thing over and over again. But I think there's really a lot of immersion practice. There's experimentation. And I think that's something we need to celebrate and do more of.
Great. Any other perspectives?
Well, yes. So Mark is my colleague. So we have had those discussions at our work. But yes, I think having also come from a technology background before I came into this line of work, really, I do see where that hesitation comes from, and I do see how it can throw people off. And even in our, through our work in the Raja, we are fairly, somewhat regularly asked about the technology that underpins this. And a lot of times it makes me think, well, we are using technology that already exists in the sense of communication technology that already exists and we are leveraging. We do not need to create yet another app to do the job that's already being done by, what's already available. And really, the work we do is not so much about, the work we particularly do does not involve that much technology, but there is a role that technology plays in different kinds of work. So it's really applying solutions to the problem. Like what we are doing with ARA is also, it's solution driven. So if the solution doesn't call for technology, let's use something else that is better applicable. So we are very much a community led, a people centered process. So yes, that's really how we think about that. And I do like what Anand said about replication. So for example, the model we are applying is basically co-production. And that can be applied in any part of the world. Any part of the global south can run this model. But it has to be contextualized to the reality on the ground of each city that we're working in. So, and the other thing with, quote unquote, scaling is this kind of process takes time. So it's not a quick fix solution. It's not a 6 months or 12 month solution. It takes time to really have a transformative change that's sustainable and not just collapses the second project ends. So yeah, that's really what I think.
Thank you. And I also have another perspective on scale and the word scale. And this is really the scale of the challenge. And, if you think about, where we were in 2015, we didn't just sign the Paris Agreement, but all countries in the world agreed to the Sustainable Development Agenda, and they agreed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. That is in 9 years' time. And achieving those goals now needs to happen under a changing climate. And to my mind, that is what adaptation means, is how do we achieve our societal goals under a changing climate? And, so that requires us to transform. If you think about the goals themselves, we have goals for people, goals for planet, goals for prosperity, goals for peace, goals for partnership. Achieving those goals under a changing climate is a huge scale task. It requires us to transform our human systems, our food security systems, our trade, our economies, our infrastructure, our societies that were built imperfectly to a past climate. And we now need to transform those systems to function well in our present and future climate. And I think the scale of that challenge is really what we're trying to tackle through adaptation. And it absolutely has to be locally led solutions that really work at the local scale. But we also really need to recognize the global effort and the global scale effort that's really needed to tackle those challenges.
Great. Thank you, Rosalind. Any other burning questions for our speakers, for any of us? We have people listening in, but no questions. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you so much. My name is Ebo Musumali. I'm coming from Zambia. I work with the Climate Smart Agriculture Alliance Zambia. It was formed following the Malabo Declaration of Heads of State to ensure that about 25 million smallholder farmers in Africa are practicing climate smart agriculture. So out of that number in Zambia, we are targeting to reach about 700,000 farmers by the year 2025. So in this case, I would like to find out how do we become the member of the alliance, and also just to form partnerships in this case, because my organization just received some funding from FAO, which is based in South Africa, to undertake a countrywide baseline survey. Because data on climate smart agriculture is missing, and this is creating a huge challenge for policymakers to make certain decisions. So in this case, how do we collaborate in ensuring that even the baseline, which is yet to start in the next 2 weeks, because we've just targeted about 34%, in terms of coverage, but our intention is to raise that figure even to 60 or 70%. So how do we collaborate in this case? Yeah.
I'll abuse the moderator's privilege and respond to that question. Thank you so much. I think the Alliance has been brought together for organizations like yours. So we're really delighted that you're interested in joining. The process to join is very simple. If you just give me your card, I will send you a membership pack, which has all the details. Takes a few minutes where, we've spoken to a lot of organizations to really understand what we can expect from members. And there are 2 or 3 things. One is we have a set of principles for action-oriented research. And we expect people signing up to the Adaptation Research Alliance to adhere to and align with these principles to the extent that is in line with their own organizational strategy. We're expecting all members of the Alliance to do one activity with another member of the Alliance, and it could be anything. It could be as small as co-writing a blog or as big as co-developing a proposal. We are expecting that each organization that is a member will nominate one person from that organization to join our plenary body, which is a very important decision-making body of the Alliance. The last thing we're expecting is from time to time, in line with your organizational ability, we will expect our members to support the governance of the Alliance, help take certain key decisions, help guide the work of the Alliance. So that's on membership. And I think more specifically, we really think we're gearing up to support processes like the one that you talked about, doing the baseline survey. We have a number of consultative processes. We're developing a co-creation space. We have evidence reviews underway, all of which you can feed into with what you're learning from the baseline survey. But I am confident that you will inform your own research processes from engaging in those activities that are already underway. So yeah, I look forward to talking to you after this, and I'll take your card.
Just one thing to
Please.
add on that, Aditya, for those listening online, is that the membership pack is also available on our website. And I think we can get that put up in the chat for those online.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Please, you'll have to.
Hello, my name is Tania Guillen from the Climate Service Center, Germany. My question goes more, you just mentioned a governing body and so, if you have already a strategy to avoid having such a superstructure not working way of work, that we know that it can sadly exist, and as we are talking about so many organizations trying to work together, if you have already thought about a strategy to avoid having this superstructure that facilitates the work.
Rosalind, how will the ARA avoid bureaucracy?
Well, I think through trying to take quite a simple governance structure. So we have our plenary body, which will be our largest body, which all organizations will have one vote effectively as part of that plenary body, and then to have the steering board as well. Aditya, I don't know if you, or Anand, I don't know if you want to give some more details about the governance.
So I think a lot of the ARA in practice, and I think it's a really good point you've raised, is how do you kind of make sure this thing happens and happens effectively and smoothly. I think a lot of it will depend on 2 things. One is our ability to really engage our members. So a lot of this we see as not being centrally driven, but really happening in a much more dispersed and distributed way. Right? And so centrally there's a role of facilitation and enabling, but a lot of it is really going to be driven by groups of folks coming together and driving certain activities and processes. So that's one. And the other is, I think some of this will naturally coalesce in different ways. It might coalesce regionally. It might coalesce by thematic areas like sectors. There's a set of players who want to work together around food or around cities or around other domains. So I think that is one way we might avoid falling into the trap, as you said, of having a very complex and then eventually becoming a rigid structure that makes things not as smooth. But great point.
Great. Thank you, Anand. Does anyone want to risk asking another question and being the person that's stopping everyone from the refreshments that are awaiting in that corner? Please go ahead. The brave person.
I wasn't at the press event yesterday. Can you just clarify the two new funders? Is that what you mentioned?
So that's the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office and the Canadian IDRC, the International Development Research Centre of Canada. That's for the CLARE programme, Climate Adaptation and Resilience Research Programme, which is a £110 million programme that we've just launched together. So we're very excited about that. I mean, the potential there is huge. So it's very exciting. And then the other funders that I was mentioning were the Global Innovation Fund, who are launching a new innovation fund on adaptation resilience, and the GSM Association, the Mobile Phone Network Operators Association, who are also funding an innovation fund on adaptation and resilience. And those they have a plan of how they're going to work together. So we kind of have an innovation track of the work of the Alliance, as well as a research track, as well as, the work that's going on and the partnerships and how we can deliver through those. And then the other was the National Institute for Health Research in the UK under the Department of Health. And that's focusing on this intersection, really important intersection between health and adaptation. And that comes under their sustainability funding area. And that research call will be announced. The details of that will be announced later, but the decision that will be £20 million towards that research area has been made. So we were able to announce that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Any final thoughts from the panelists or anyone? And we are here for a while, and the drinks are getting opened in the corner, and snacks are there laid out nicely. So if there are any questions that you'd like to put to the co-chairs or to Sunena or to me, we are here, and we look forward to having a chat with you now. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, let's speak more over a glass of wine or water.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for your help.